"Allow me to assist you with that," Emma Richard offered, extending her hand toward the handle of the rolling suitcase that an elderly woman was having difficulty managing. The airport terminal buzzed with activity, yet Emma's attention was solely on the silver-haired lady, whose arthritic hands quivered slightly with exertion. "Oh, thank you, dear." The woman gazed up with appreciative blue eyes. "These old hands don't work like they used to." Emma smiled, momentarily forgetting her own exhaustion from a 12-hour shift. "I'm Emma," she introduced herself, taking note of the woman's elegant pearl necklace and tasteful pink coat. "Where are you headed?" "I'm Margaret Wilson," the woman replied, patiently awaiting my son's arrival. "I've been visiting my sister in Florida. The VIP lounge is far more inviting than these plastic seats," Emma proposed, motioning toward the nearby terminal chairs. "I can take you there if you're interested." Margaret's expression lit up. "That would be wonderful. My son always insists I wait there, but I got a bit turned around after deplaning." Emma led Margaret through the bustling terminal, adjusting her pace to match the older woman's slower steps. At the entrance to the lounge, she presented her airline ID to the attendant, who nodded them through. "What a gift it is to encounter kindness in a setting like this," Margaret remarked, as Emma assisted her in getting comfortable in a soft armchair. "Airports remind me of the passage of time. It's a constant observation," Emma said, placing Margaret's luggage within easy reach, as people hurried by, too preoccupied to lend a hand. "My James expresses the same sentiment. He often remarks on how people seem to overlook their manners nowadays." "Your son appears quite perceptive," Emma noted. Margaret radiated with a sense of nurturing joy. "Indeed he is. He created his company from the ground up, and now he's—" She caught herself with a light chuckle. "Pay attention, brag. I guess that's a mother's right." "It's lovely to hear," Emma replied with genuine warmth. "It would be wise to allow you some time to rest before his arrival." "Thank you once more, dear. You've truly brightened an old woman's day." Emma offered a gentle squeeze to Margaret's shoulder before she turned to depart. "Take care, Mrs. Wilson." Unbeknownst to either woman, a tall man with captivating blue eyes lingered just outside the lounge entrance, having observed the entire exchange. James Wilson arrived early to surprise his mother, only to be taken aback by the heartfelt kindness of the flight attendant in the blue blazer. As Emma strolled away her airline ID, the card slipped from her pocket, landing softly on the plush carpet of the lounge. James advanced, reaching for the tiny plastic card. "Excuse me," he called, but Emma had already vanished into the throng. He examined the ID, "Emma Richards, flight attendant, Horizon Airlines," he murmured to himself. Her photo captured a radiant smile that mirrored the one she'd shared with his mother. "James," his mother's voice called out, pulling him from his thoughts. "You're early." He slipped the ID into his pocket and approached Margaret with open arms. "How was your flight, Mum?" "Much better, thanks to that wonderful flight attendant. She assisted me during a difficult moment with my luggage." James nodded, his gaze wandering to the spot where Emma had vanished. "I observed. What a compassionate young lady," Margaret went on. "You know, she brought to mind your father's sister in her youth, in the same considerate way." James assisted in collecting his mother's possessions. "Are you all set to go home?" "Absolutely, my love. I'm looking forward to my own bed after a week on Clara's lumpy guest mattress." As they made their way to the exit, James's hand brushed against the ID. Within his pocket, he could certainly submit it to the lost and found. That would be the logical course of action. "Mom," he said suddenly, "did you catch the name of that flight attendant?" "Emma," she said. "What prompts your inquiry?" James offered a faint smile, lost in thought. Later that evening, after ensuring his mother was comfortably at home, James found himself at his desk, gazing intently at Emma's ID card. His thumb glided over her name as he pondered his next step. "You can't just appear at her job," he whispered to himself. "That would come off as creepy, overstepping." He wasn't certain, but there was something about her exchange with his mother that had resonated with him profoundly. In the realm of business transactions and calculated connections, authentic kindness devoid of ulterior motives was a rarity. He grasped a pen and started to compose a note on his personal stationery. Following numerous rejected drafts, he finally chose to express straightforward appreciation. I appreciate your kindness towards my mother at O'Hare. She can't stop raving about the charming flight attendant. I would be grateful for the opportunity to share my appreciation over a cup of coffee. James Wilson. He set down the note and identification. Inside an envelope, he resolved to take it to the Horizon Airlines office the following day. Though it was a modest act, he sensed that Emma Richards was a person deserving of his acquaintance. As he sealed the envelope, James found himself unable to dispel the memory of Emma's tender help to his mother. A modest gesture of goodwill that, unbeknownst to them, would alter the course of their lives eternally. Would you like another beverage, sir? Emma inquired of the businessman in 14C, who hardly glanced away from his laptop to decline with a shake of his head. Just 3 days after assisting Margaret Wilson, Emma found herself airborne again on a Chicago to Denver flight, battling the weariness from the early morning takeoff. Emma, we're beginning our descent in 15, the head attendant announced from the galley. Once she had landed and fulfilled her responsibilities, Emma made her way to the staff area to review her schedule for the following day. Diane, her supervisor, gestured for her to come closer. Richards, an envelope arrived for you yesterday, Diane said as she handed it over. Looks fancy. Emma flipped the cream-colored envelope, admiring the luxurious texture of the paper. Upon opening it, she discovered her misplaced ID. A card accompanied by a handwritten note. She perused it twice, a warm hue rising to her cheeks. What is it? Inquired her colleague Mike, leaning in to get a better look over her shoulder. Who, James Wilson, the individual involved in real estate? I have no idea, Emma replied, tucking the note into her pocket. I assisted an older woman at the airport who mentioned her son, James. Well, based on that letterhead, her son is James Wilson of Wilson Property Development. That guy's face is on billboards all over downtown. Later that evening in her apartment, Emma's roommate Sophia almost spilled her wine when Emma revealed the note. James Wilson. Sophia seized her phone and displayed an image of the James Wilson. This guy. Emma glanced at the screen and instantly recognized the blue eyes she'd fleetingly noticed watching her in the terminal. That's definitely the guy I saw at the airport, Emma confirmed, sinking onto their well-worn sofa. What am I supposed to do with this? Sophia looked at her as if she had sprouted a second head. Call the number and grab coffee with the attractive millionaire. This isn't rocket science, Em. It feels strange. I was simply fulfilling my responsibilities. That's precisely why it's not strange. You weren't trying to charm his mother to reach him. You were simply being yourself. Supportive. Compassionate. Emma. And he took notice. Sophia passed her phone to Emma. Call him. After a night of contemplation, Emma sent a text to the number the following morning. Mr. Wilson, I appreciate you returning my ID. Coffee sounds lovely. Emma Richards. His reply arrived just moments after. You can call me James. What do you think about meeting at Lakefront Cafe tomorrow at 2? The cafe was located just outside O'Hare, a favorite spot among airport staff. Emma arrived 5 minutes early, taken aback to see James already present, wearing a casual button-down instead of the suit she had anticipated. Emma, he said, rising as she neared. His assured stance masked the subtle, anxious rhythm of his fingers drumming on his coffee cup. James, she responded, settling into the chair opposite him. Thank you for returning my ID. I hadn't even noticed it was missing. I appreciate your assistance with my mother. She's still talking about you, Emma said with a smile. She was very sweet. Is she a regular traveler? She visits her sister twice a year. Typically, I coordinate support, he said, but there was a misunderstanding this time. He paused. I was observing you, you see, before you became aware of her. Emma arched an eyebrow. That sounds a bit unsettling. James chuckled, a rich sound that eased his professional facade. I noticed how exhausted you appeared. Must be the end of your shift, right? Most individuals might have simply strolled by. I don't believe that basic decency warrants a coffee reward, but I won't grumble. She took a sip of her latte. I've handled multi-million-dollar deals with less anxiety than I'm feeling at this moment, James confessed unexpectedly. Emma couldn't help but laugh. What's the reason? I'm merely a flight attendant. That's precisely the reason. You're real. Most people I encounter either have an agenda or are attempting to win me over. Their coffee lingered for an hour, then two. James proposed that they extend their discussion with a stroll along the Chicago Riverwalk. So you built your company from the ground up? Emma inquired as they walked alongside the tour boats. My father was a contractor. I spent my summers working alongside him, and then I pursued my studies in architecture. I began flipping houses in my 20s, James said with a casual shrug. It was all about being in the right place at the right time, especially with those downtown developments. And now you've got billboards featuring your face, Emma joked. James let out a low groan. The concept from the marketing team. I can't stand it. They're not so bad. You look very trustworthy. High praise, he replied with a smile. What about you? I've always dreamed of being a flight attendant. Began as a means to explore the world on a modest teacher's salary. Developed a deep affection for it, the individuals, the locations. 6 years later, here I am. As the evening drew near, James accompanied Emma to her car. This was enjoyable, he remarked. Far beyond my expectations. I agree, Emma confessed. I believe you're putting too much thought into the whole situation with your mom. Perhaps, James acknowledged. Yet I'm thankful I did. Might we have the pleasure of repeating this? Perhaps over dinner. Emma regarded him, this affluent yet unexpectedly ordinary man who had made an effort due to her kindness towards his mother. Despite her reservations, she caught herself agreeing. I'm heading to New York tomorrow and will be back on Saturday. Sunday evening work. Sunday's perfect, James replied, a genuine smile lighting up his face. I'll text you details. As Emma drove home, a smile crept across her face. She had anticipated a sense of superiority or disdain from someone of his standing. Instead, she discovered James Wilson to be refreshingly sincere, even a bit anxious. It was charming. Her phone vibrated, signaling a message from Sophia. Give me the details now. Emma laughed. What specifics might she reveal? That James Wilson was nothing like his advertisement. That despite her reluctance to embrace Sophia's enthusiasm, she was anticipating Sunday more than she would care to acknowledge. That somehow, returning a lost ID, had turned into the most interesting conversation she'd had in months. She texted back a simple, having dinner with him Sunday. Sophia's response was immediate. OMG, this is happening. Emma shook her head, but couldn't deny the flutter of anticipation in her chest. Something told her that coffee with James Wilson was just the beginning. This is your building? Emma asked, staring up at the gleaming glass tower on Michigan Avenue, where James had invited her for their third date. Of course it is, James chuckled, guiding her through the lobby with a light hand at the small of her back. Just the top few floors. The view of the lake makes it worth the mortgage. The elevator whisked them to the 47th floor, where James's penthouse opened to floor-to-ceiling windows, showcasing Chicago's skyline. Emma walked to the glass, taking in the panorama. So this is how the other half lives? She murmured. Is it too much? James asked, standing beside her. Emma turned to him with a small smile. Just different from my reality. My entire apartment could fit in your living room. 3 weeks had passed since their coffee date, and despite her initial reservations, Emma found herself increasingly drawn to James. Behind his success, she discovered a man who worked hard, loved his mother deeply, and listened when she spoke, as if her words truly mattered. I made dinner, James announced, leading her to the dining area, where the table was set with candles. Emma raised an eyebrow. "You cook? Don't sound so surprised." "Mom insisted I learn. Said she wouldn't raise a son who couldn't feed himself." Over homemade pasta, they talked about their weeks, Emma's flight to Tokyo, James's new development project. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter. Later, as they shared dessert on his balcony, James asked, "Would you like to meet my mother properly? She keeps asking about that lovely flight attendant." "I'd like that," Emma replied, "though she might be disappointed to learn I'm quite ordinary outside of airport rescues." "Trust me," James said, his eyes warm in the city lights. "There's nothing ordinary about you." The following Sunday, Emma joined James for dinner at Margaret's elegant brownstone in Lincoln Park. She arrived with flowers, instantly charmed by the cozy home, filled with family photos. "Emma dear," Margaret embraced her, like an old friend. "I'm so glad James finally brought you. I was beginning to think he was keeping you all to himself." "Mom," James warned, but couldn't hide his smile. "What? I'm simply stating facts." Margaret ushered them inside. "Besides, it's not everyday fate drops the perfect woman right in front of my son." Emma laughed. "I wouldn't call helping with luggage fate." "I would," Margaret replied firmly. "Kind hearts recognize each other. My Henry always said that." Over dinner, Margaret shared stories of James as a boy, his determination to build the neighborhood's tallest treehouse, his habit of rescuing stray animals. "He's always had a good heart," Margaret said fondly, "just like his father." "Mom thinks she orchestrated our meeting," James explained to Emma later as they drove home. "I don't have the heart to tell her it was pure coincidence." "Maybe not," Emma mused. "I wasn't supposed to work that shift. I traded with a colleague." James glanced at her surprised. "Really? So maybe Margaret's right about fate," Emma teased. "Though I'm hardly perfect." "Close enough," James replied softly, reaching for her hand. As autumn settled over Chicago, their relationship deepened. James introduced Emma to his world of business dinners and charity galas, where she charmed his colleagues with her straightforward manner and quick wit. Meanwhile, Emma brought James to staff parties and her favorite hole-in-the-wall restaurants, pleased to see how easily he connected with her friends, despite the obvious wealth gap. "You really bring out the best in him," James's business partner, Robert, remarked to Emma during a company gathering. "He's definitely more relaxed since he met you." "Intense?" Emma questioned. "James has always been motivated. Excellence, perfection, nothing less. It's brought him success, but not always joy." Robert observed James from across the room. "He seems to smile more these days." Not everything went according to plan. At times, James's affluence left Emma feeling uneasy, particularly when he nonchalantly proposed weekend getaways to New York or Paris. "I can't simply abandon everything because you wish to visit the Eiffel Tower," she clarified after one of those proposals. "I have shifts planned out weeks ahead." "I could speak with your supervisor," James suggested. "That's precisely what I want to avoid," Emma responded with determination. "I need to achieve success on my own terms." James appeared taken aback. "I apologize, you have a point." He adapted to her schedule, and Emma grew to embrace occasional extravagant gifts without the weight of expectations. Their diverse backgrounds transformed from a hurdle into a chance to experience the world from new perspectives. 3 months into their relationship, they found a comfortable rhythm. Dinner at his place when she returned from flights, quiet evenings at her apartment watching movies, and Sunday brunches with Margaret. "I've never seen him like this," Margaret confided to Emma during a quiet moment in the kitchen. "James has dated, of course, but he's always kept women at arm's length." "Not with you. He's special," Emma admitted. "I wasn't looking for someone like him, but the heart wants what it wants," Margaret finished for her. patting Emma's hand. And my son's heart clearly wants you. That night, as they walked along the lakefront despite the December chill, Emma realized she was falling in love with James Wilson, not the millionaire developer, but the man who cooked pasta to his mother's recipe, who listened intently when she spoke about her dreams, who had pursued her because of a simple act of kindness. What she was unaware of was that their easygoing routine was on the brink of being shattered by revelations that would challenge the very foundation of what they had created together. An international team? Emma exclaimed, her excitement palpable. James's face brightened with authentic pride as Emma revealed her news during dinner at his penthouse. The city lights sparkled beyond the windows, but Emma's focus remained on his response. It's 6 months in London, starting next month, she explained, twisting her napkin nervously. This is the chance I've been anticipating. Extended journeys, enhanced compensation, and an opportunity to establish a base in Europe. You've wanted this for years, James said, reaching across the table to take her hand. I remember you mentioning it on our second date. Emma nodded, surprised he remembered that detail. It's competitive. Only 3 attendants from Chicago were chosen. Then they chose the best, James smiled, raising his wine glass. To new adventures. They clinked glasses, but Emma couldn't help noticing something shift in James's eyes. A momentary shadow that disappeared so quickly she almost thought she'd imagined it. Are you really okay with this? She inquired, her voice laced with hesitation. Us being apart for 6 months? Of course, James replied. Maybe it was too soon. We'll find a way to make it happen. I travel to Europe for business regularly anyway. Later that night, as James drove her home, his usual attentiveness seemed dimmed by distraction. When he kissed her goodnight, something felt different, more intense, almost desperate. Over the course of the next week, James grew more and more withdrawn. His messages became briefer, his calls more sporadic. When they did meet, he seemed distracted, his thoughts wandering, even though he was right there. Did I do something wrong? Emma finally asked during a quiet dinner at her apartment. No, of course not, James insisted. But the warmth in his eyes had cooled, just busy with the new development in Wicker Park. Emma was skeptical of his words. As the day of her departure drew near, the gap between them grew larger. James had arranged an unexpected flurry of meetings and business trips, complicating their chances to connect. Perhaps it's for the best, Emma said to Sophia as they packed up her apartment. We come from different worlds anyway. This was probably never meant to last long term. Sophia rolled her eyes. That's the worst excuse I've ever heard. Different worlds. This isn't Romeo and Juliet. You know what I mean? Emma sighed, taping up a box. His life is present. His business. His mother. Mine is wherever the next opportunity takes me. Have you actually talked to him about this? Did we really talk? Emma hesitated. He claims we'll find a way, but his behavior reveals another truth. 2 days before her departure, Emma made the choice to face the situation directly. She had allowed James some distance, believing he required time to digest her revelation. Yet now she found herself in need of clarity. She made her way to his office building downtown, resolute in her intention to engage in a candid discussion. The receptionist recognized her right away. He's currently in a meeting, but he should be wrapping up shortly. You can wait in his office if you'd like. Emma nodded gratefully and took the elevator to the executive floor. As she neared James's office, she caught the sound of his elevated voice filtering through the slightly ajar door. No, Robert, I can't simply expand to London just because Emma's heading there, James stated with conviction. The market timing isn't appropriate, and you are well aware of that. Emma froze, her hand halfway to the door. Maybe not, Robert's voice replied. But have you considered what happens after 6 months? Long-distance relationships are hard, especially when you're clearly this invested. Of course I've considered it, James snapped. I've hardly considered anything else, but I can't bring myself to ask her to forfeit this chance. She's put in too much effort for it. And you're terrified of losing her, Robert stated with a calm certainty. There was a lengthy silence before James responded, his voice now softer. Yes, I'm filled with dread at the thought of losing her. No, I haven't told her I love her yet. Emma gasped softly, her handbag slipping from her fingers and hitting the hardwood floor with a thud. The dialogue within suddenly ceased. Is anyone there? James called out. Emma thought about running away, but she compelled herself to open the door. James stood by his desk, phone in hand, his expression shifting from irritation to shock when he saw her. Emma, he began, but appeared at a loss for words. I came to talk, she said quietly, but I think I heard what I needed to hear. James set the phone down, Robert forgotten on the other end. How much did you hear? Enough. Emma gathered her courage. You're pulling away because I'm leaving, aren't you? Making it easier to end things. That's not. James ran a hand through his hair in frustration. It's complicated. Then uncomplicate it, Emma challenged. If you have something to say it now. The silence between them stretched painfully. James took a step toward her, then stopped. I don't want to hold you back, he finally said. This opportunity is everything you've worked for. That's not an answer, Emma replied, disappointment settling like a weight in her chest. And it's not your decision to make alone. Emma, I leave in 2 days. She cut him off. If you figure out what you really want, you know where to find me. She turned and walked out, ignoring his call of her name. Her vision blurred with unshed tears as she rode the elevator down. She'd hoped for clarity, but felt more confused than ever. She'd heard him admit he loved her. To Robert, not to her. Yet he couldn't say it to her face. As she drove home, her phone buzzed repeatedly, with calls from James. But she couldn't bring herself to answer. She needed space to think, to decide if a relationship with someone who couldn't communicate his feelings was worth fighting for. By the time she boarded her flight to London 2 days later, James had sent dozens of messages and voicemails, all saying variations of, we need to talk, but never addressing what she'd overheard. None of them contained the words she most needed to hear. As the plane lifted off from O'Hare, Emma watched Chicago shrink beneath her, wondering if she was leaving behind something precious or simply facing the inevitable end of a relationship that had always been on borrowed time. Another cup, her love? Asked Maggie, the elderly British flight attendant who had taken Emma under her wing since her arrival in London. Emma nodded gratefully, pushing aside the flight schedule she'd been reviewing in the crew lounge at Heathrow. Thanks. I'm still getting used to proper English tea. 3 months into her London assignment, Emma had settled into a routine. Her flat in Kensington was small but charming, her colleagues welcoming, and the international routes challenging in exactly the way she'd hoped. Yet something was missing. Any plans for your 3-day break? Maggie asked, sliding into the seat across from her. Just the usual. Museums, maybe catch a show. Maggie studied her with knowing eyes. Still no word from your American fellow? Emma shook her head. After departing from Chicago without settling matters with James, she had anticipated him to respond to her messages, maybe even come to see her. Instead, silence had descended between them like a thick veil. His loss, Maggie declared firmly. Yet you still find yourself checking your phone every 5 minutes. I do not, Emma protested weakly, even as her hand instinctively moved toward her device. Back in Chicago, James sat in his mother's kitchen, pushing food around his plate during their weekly Sunday dinner. Margaret watched him with concern. It's been weeks since you last mentioned Emma, she finally said. I take it there hasn't been any communication? James placed his fork on the table. She's focused on advancing her professional journey in London. I'm occupied at the moment. Nonsense, Margaret retorted. You're repeating the same error Your father made. James glanced up abruptly. What do you mean? Your father was always on the move, he said. When we were young, building the business. He always believed there would be more time to share his emotions. Margaret's gaze drifted away, lost in thought. When he fell ill, his greatest sorrow was the countless moments he had let slip by, thinking tomorrow would forever be available. This is different, James contended. Emma and I, we desire different outcomes. Do you? Margaret questioned. Or are you hesitant to desire the same outcomes? Later that night, James stood at his office window, staring at the Chicago skyline. On his desk sat airline schedules and property listings for London that Robert had compiled weeks ago, information he'd requested but hadn't acted upon. His phone rang, displaying Robert's name. The Frankfurt meeting is confirmed for next week, Robert reported. The German investors are eager to move forward. Book it, James replied. And, Robert, remember that London expansion we discussed? Let's revisit it. What changed your mind? Robert asked, surprise evident in his voice. James watched the city lights below, thinking of Emma. Nothing changed. I just stopped running from what I already knew. Meanwhile in London, Emma stepped off a flight from Paris, exhausted but satisfied after smoothly handling a medical emergency on board. As passengers deplaned, she observed an elderly French couple grappling with their carry-ons. Allow me, she offered in careful French, guiding them toward their connecting gate. You are very kind, the husband said with a hint of an accent in his English. Our daughter typically accompanies us, but today we find ourselves on our own. I'm happy to help, Emma replied, recalling her first encounter with Margaret. You possess a gentle spirit, the man's wife remarked, yet there is a hint of sorrow in your gaze. Emma blinked in surprise at the perceptiveness. Love, perhaps, the woman continued with a knowing smile. My Henri had that same look when we were apart during his military service. We figured it out, Henri said, gently patting his wife's hand. When you find love, distance is merely a detail, not a barrier. Those words lingered with Emma as the evening unfolded. Upon returning to her flat, she felt compelled to dial Margaret's number before she could second-guess herself. Emma, my dear, Margaret replied with warmth. What a delightful surprise. They engaged in conversation about London, Margaret's garden, and the foundation's progress before Emma mustered her courage. How is he? She asked softly. Stubborn, Margaret replied without a moment's pause. Working too much, smiling too little, he misses you. He hasn't called. He's just like his father, she said, terrible at showing it. Margaret paused. But he's been asking about London property markets. Draw your own conclusions. That night, Emma envisioned Chicago, with its refreshing lake breezes and towering skyscrapers, imagining James's penthouse and the sound of his rare, genuine laughter. Across the ocean, James stood in Frankfurt Airport after his investor meeting, watching couples reunite at the arrival's gate. A young woman flung herself into her partner's arms, both laughing through tears of joy. An elderly man held up a sign with his wife's name, his face illuminating with joy when she appeared. James took out his phone and dialed Robert. Did the meeting go well? Robert asked. Indeed, James affirmed. But I need you to clear my schedule for next week. All of it. James, you have the council meeting on Tuesday. And the all of it, James repeated firmly. I'm heading to London. Finally, Robert muttered. Should I inform Emma? James paused to consider. No. I need to do this right. As he ended the call, James felt a sense of clarity that had eluded him for months. He'd spent his life building security. Financial, professional, emotional. Creating walls to protect himself from disappointment and loss. Emma had traversed those walls without any effort, merely by embracing her true self. On her next day off, Emma found herself at Portobello Market, browsing antique stalls with little enthusiasm. Her phone chimed with a text from Sophia back in Chicago. James visited the apartment today, inquiring about your London address. I didn't give it to him. You're welcome, but I thought you should know. What's happening? Emma stared at the message, her heart racing. Before she could respond, another message came through, this time from Margaret. Pardon the interference of an old woman, but some paths are worth exploring, even when the end point remains unclear. Please give him a call, my dear. Emma discovered a secluded spot away from the bustling market and quickly dialed James's number, determined not to let her courage slip away. It went directly to voicemail. James, it's me, she said after the beep. I think we need to talk. Truly engage in conversation this time. Call me when you can. She hung up, not knowing that at that very moment James was boarding a flight to London. His phone already switched to airplane mode, a small velvet box tucked securely in his jacket pocket. Are you sure your mother is feeling all right? Emma asked into her phone, wheeling her suitcase through the arrivals area at O'Hare. After 6 months in London, she had finally returned to Chicago, her international assignment complete. She's fine, James's voice assured her. Just eager to see you. She has secured a table at Lakeside for 7. Right from the airport to dinner? Emma chuckled. I really ought to shower first, I think. Mom's being impatient, saying she has some important health decisions to discuss and needs my opinion. Emma frowned. That sounds serious. Is everything all right? You know how my mother is, always so dramatic about everything. I'll catch you at 7. I'll be there, Emma promised, flagging down a taxi. 3 months earlier, James had surprised her in London. She had just come back from a flight to Paris, only to find him waiting in the arrivals hall, appearing jet-lagged yet resolute. The sight of him standing there, hands in his pockets, halted her in her tracks. You're a hard woman to surprise, he remarked, a nervous smile dancing on his lips. You're always at airports. Before she could respond, he continued, words spilling out. I've been foolish. I was afraid of losing you, so I distanced myself, which almost ensured that I would lose you. I've never excelled at this, at opening up, but I'm getting there. Emma stayed quiet, her heart racing, as James grasped her hands in his. I love you, Emma Richards. I've loved you since the moment I saw you assist my mother at the airport. Not solely for your beauty, though you possess it, but for your kindness when you believed no one was observing. 3 months of careful rebuilding had followed. James had extended his London stay, working remotely while they rediscovered each other. He had shared his anxieties regarding long-distance relationships, expressing doubts about his ability to measure up to the thrill of her career. Emma had revealed her own doubts about belonging in his world. We're quite the pair, James had joked one evening as they strolled along the Thames, both gripped by the fear of losing something we never truly embraced in the first place. Now, back in Chicago, Emma rushed to get dinner ready. She had vacated her previous apartment before her departure for London, so James had made arrangements for her to reside in his penthouse until she secured a new place. An arrangement that was both thrilling and filled with ambiguity. At 6:55, Emma stepped into Lakeside Restaurant, a sophisticated venue with views of Lake Michigan. The hostess greeted her with a familiar smile. Miss Richards, your party is waiting by the window. Emma followed her through the dining room, expecting to see Margaret's silver hair. Instead, James sat alone at a table for 2, a single rose lying across the empty place setting. James, where's your mother? He rose to welcome her with a kiss. My mother extends her regrets. It seems she's on the mend. Emma squinted, her gaze sharp. She was never sick, was she? James smiled awkwardly. Mom's idea. She figured you'd come right here if you were concerned about her. Cunning, Emma remarked, as she settled into her seat. Like mother, like son. Dinner was easygoing, filled with light conversation, as they comfortably settled back into their time together in Chicago. James inquired about her last weeks in London, and Emma recounted tales of her co-workers and beloved spots. I have something to share with you, James remarked as their desserts were served. A project I have been developing. Is there another development? Emma inquired. Something different. James leaned in closer. I'm establishing a foundation for elderly travelers in airports worldwide. Emma set down her fork. What? The Margaret Wilson Travelers Assistance Foundation. James continued, his eyes shining with excitement. They offer professional assistance services in major airports, cozy lounges, and even overnight accommodations for those unexpected flight delays. James, that's incredible. Emma breathed, genuinely moved. What sparked this? You did, he replied with ease. A single act of kindness that transformed everything. For my mother, for me. I want to multiply that thousands of times over. Emma reached across the table to take his hand, deeply touched. There's more, James added. We require a program director, someone who comprehends both the airline sector and the requirements of passengers. A person who is kind, knowledgeable, and exceptionally well organized. Emma's eyes grew wide. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a purpose, James corrected. Regardless of your choice, whether we stand united or apart, this foundation will serve to assist others. That's your legacy, Emma. You sparked it with one simple act of kindness. You've considered every detail, Emma said softly. James shook his head. Not everything. I'm uncertain about what lies ahead for us. I just know I want there to be a us, whether you're flying around the world or running the foundation or doing something else entirely. After dinner, James suggested a detour before heading home. There's somewhere I want to take you first, he explained, directing the driver to O'Hare. The airport, Emma questioned. I just left there, James merely smiled. Indulge my request. 20 minutes later, they found themselves outside the freshly updated VIP lounge, now adorned with a subtle sign, the Margaret Wilson Travelers Assistance Lounge. Did you really name it after your mother? Emma asked, taken aback. She's not aware yet. It's her birthday surprise next week. As they entered the empty lounge, Emma noticed it had been transformed with comfortable seating, charging stations, and a small staff area. This is where it all began, James said, stopping at the exact spot where Emma had helped Margaret 6 months earlier. Where I first saw you. Emma smiled at the memory. Your mother dropped her bag right here, and you stopped to help when a dozen others walked past. James grasped her hands firmly. That moment transformed everything for me. To Emma's astonishment, he knelt down, still holding her hands. I had this entire speech ready, he confessed, suddenly appearing anxious. Reflecting on the lessons you've imparted, about the significance of genuine connections over mere success or security, about my desire to create something enduring with you. But standing here, I can only think of one thing to say. He reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a stunning yet elegant diamond ring. Emma Richards, you helped a stranger without expecting anything in return, James said, his voice steady, despite the emotion in his eyes. I'm hoping you'll now assist me for the remainder of our days. Will you marry me? Emma's vision blurred with tears as the full circle of their journey enveloped her. From this very spot where she had merely assisted an elderly woman with her luggage to now being invited to share a life with her son. Yes, she whispered, then spoke with growing confidence. Yes, I will. As James slipped the ring onto her finger and rose to kiss her, the lounge door opened to reveal Margaret, beaming with delight. Did she say yes? Of course she did. Margaret rushed ahead to embrace them both. I told you this was destiny, Emma chuckled amidst her tears. You were right all along. A mother usually is, Margaret replied with a wink. I must admit, this has been my most impressive achievement in the realm of matchmaking. James encircled each of them with an arm. I believe we can all concur that some of the most remarkable journeys start with a straightforward gesture of goodwill. Emma gazed at the ring on her finger, then at the spot where she had first encountered Margaret, and finally at James, the man who recognized her kindness and fell in love with her heart. And end exactly where they're meant to, she added softly. 1 year later. May I help you with that? Emma asked, kneeling beside an elderly man struggling to retrieve his fallen cane in the busy terminal of O'Hare International Airport. Thank you, dear, he replied with appreciation as she handed it to him. These old knees don't bend like they used to. The Margaret Wilson Lounge is just around that corner, Emma suggested, pointing down the concourse. You might find it more pleasant to wait there. Is it accessible to all? The man inquired with uncertainty. Without a doubt, Emma confirmed confidently. It's specifically designed for those who require a bit more support. She observed as an attendant, in a blue blazer, welcomed the man at the lounge entrance, aiding him with his luggage. A year after its inception, the Margaret Wilson Travelers Assistance Foundation now functioned in 12 major airports throughout the United States, with plans for European expansion set to commence next month. Surveying your kingdom, James's voice came from behind her. Emma turned to see her husband approaching with 2 coffee cups. Not at all. Just double-checking that everything's functioning properly before we head out. James offered her a cup. The foundation will endure, even without its director, for a fortnight, you see. I understand, Emma replied, taking both the coffee and the light-hearted banter in stride. I just want everything perfect before our trip. They strolled toward the international terminal, where they would soon board a flight to Italy for their delayed honeymoon. After a small wedding 6 months earlier, with Margaret as maid of honor, of course, work had kept them both too busy for a proper getaway. Speaking of perfect, James said, Mum called. The Boston location opens next week, and she's already booked her flight to oversee the ribbon cutting. Emma laughed. She's taking her role as foundation ambassador very seriously. She claims it provides her with a sense of direction. Moreover, she enjoys sharing the story of our meeting with everyone. James tightened his grip on Emma's hand. Although she continues to claim complete credit for the entire endeavor. Indeed, she ought to, Emma responded with a grin. If she hadn't dropped her bag exactly where I was walking. The foundation had become Emma's fervent pursuit. After accepting James's proposal, she took the time to consider his job offer, resolute in her belief that their personal relationship would remain distinct from any professional decisions. Ultimately, the opportunity to assist travelers on a worldwide level had become too appealing to resist. They observed a young flight attendant aiding an elderly couple with their boarding passes. The attendant glanced up, recognized Emma, and offered a respectful nod. You've inspired an entire generation of airline staff, James noted. Diane informs me, kindness metrics have increased 30% overall. Kindness metrics, Emma echoed with a chuckle. Only you would measure compassion. Investors pay attention to the numbers, James reminded her. By the way, Robert mentions, the London location is ahead of schedule. They stop by a window that overlooks the tarmac, observing planes as they taxi and take off, framed by the stunning Chicago skyline. Did you ever picture this? Emma asked, gesturing around them. When you saw me helping your mother that day, did you think we'd find ourselves here? James pondered the question. I knew I wanted to meet you. Everything else. He shook his head in amazement. This has surpassed every expectation. Their flight was called for boarding, and they joined the line, Emma instinctively scanning the crowd for travelers who might need assistance. Some habits never change, James commented fondly. Would you desire them to? Emma asked. Never. James kissed her cheek. Your compassion is what started this whole journey. As they settled into their seats, Emma glanced out the window at the airport where everything had begun. From a simple act of kindness had grown not just their love story, but a foundation that helped thousands of travelers daily. Beside her, James squeezed her hand as the plane began its taxi. Ready for our next adventure? Emma smiled, reflecting on how far they'd come from that chance encounter. With you, always. The plane lifted off, carrying them toward new horizons. Together,